You're most likely aware of the controversial AtGames Namco collection. The box advertises the arcade versions of the games, but the unit itself contains the NES ones. But what about their other collections? Are these also garbage or misunderstood? Let's take a look. What's going on? It's Podrez coming at you with another video. Alright, so if you've seen some of my videos and you like what I do, hit that subscribe button down there. We are super close to 30k subscribers, so just a few more and we'll be right there. And if you want to be included in a random screenshot, just go to discord.podrez.net and I'll also put a link in the description. Anyway, let's talk about the AtGames Blast collections. In 2017, things were not going well for AtGames. Their Sega Genesis Flashback console was not well received. When Sega announced the Genesis Mini in 2018, AtGames thought they were getting another chance, but Sega had no plans with working with AtGames ever again. But AtGames would make the best of it and take advantage of the licenses that they still had. Here's the AtGames Blast. These are a series of collections featuring many games. They come with a controller and dongle that you can plug into your TV. On paper, these seem like innocent collections, but the Namco one got the spotlight for negative reasons. On the box, we see screenshots of the arcade versions, but the unit itself contains the NES ones. There's no way to spin this, it's false advertising. To make matters worse, the YouTuber John Hancock received an early copy that did contain the arcade ROMs. AtGames probably did this to trick people into thinking the arcade versions are on here when it's just the NES ones. AtGames would offer a lame explanation on Twitter and never apologized for misleading customers. Because of what happened, people generally disregard the AtGames Blast collections, but minus the controversy, are these collections really that bad? Let's take a look at a few of them. It's not a typical collection that you plug into your TV. You get a wireless controller that takes batteries and a dongle that plugs into the TV. The dongle itself is powered by a USB cord that's supposed to plug into a USB port. Look at how small this cord is. How is this supposed to reach anything? And why don't you get a power cord? I really hate it when companies just give us a cord without a way to plug it into the wall. The controller is very light and it does feel cheap, but it does feel alright in the hands. The point of these consoles is not to be high quality, but to offer a convenient and cheap way to play classic games. We'll start with the Namco one. I didn't talk much about it in my previous video, so I'll give this a fair review. So we know these are the NES ROMs, but if we forget the controversy, is this a viable collection? It does have a good lineup of games, including many Japanese exclusives. In McBee, you control a mouse that must collect all the artwork. If you touch one of the cats, you lose. When you're on the trampoline, you're immune to the cats, but if you jump too many times, it will break. The NES version of this game was never released outside of Japan, so it's cool that it was included here. Dig Dug is another Famicom game that was never brought over from Japan. Here, you must blow up all the enemies to advance to the next stage. You're able to dig tunnels, and you can drop rocks on the enemies for extra points. It is cool that we're finally able to play this version. Unfortunately, the good news ends here. The emulation is terrible, if you couldn't already tell. The pixels are all smoothed out and it looks blurry. Isn't this supposed to be HDMI? Where's the 1080p resolution? There's no way to customize the games either. AtGames gives you absolutely nothing besides the games themselves. This is a very lazy compilation of games that was probably thrown together in a couple of hours. If you want to play the NES versions of the Namco games, Namco Museum Archives Volume 1 and 2 are far better. Here's the Atari Flashback Blast. The back of the box shows 2600 games, so we at least know what we're getting. They're not being deceptive this time. Because AtGames makes the Atari Flashback consoles, I expect this one to be decent. The game selection is very good. You get a lot more games than the Namco collection, and they went with some of the most well-known 2600 games. They captured most of the genres like space shooters, adventure games, sports, arcade ports, board games, and more. The only thing missing are the paddle games, which is understandable because the controller doesn't have analog capabilities. They have some of the earlier games like Maze Craze, where you must race to the end without touching the enemies. Some of the later titles made it onto here as well, like Secret Quest, which is an impressive Zelda clone. This is a decent collection of titles, but AtGames cheaped out on a few things. The emulation quality could be way better. The games look like you're playing on a blurry CRT TV, which may not bother you, but there's no way to change it. You can't adjust the games in any way. Most collections let you change the aspect ratio and add or remove scan lines, but this collection gives you nothing. This is weird because AtGames' other Flashback consoles do have these basic features. I assume they purposely didn't implement these because of the price point. I do think this is a better collection than the Namco one. There's more games, and we're actually getting the product that's being advertised, but the emulation is bad and there's no extra features. There's other options like the Game Station if you're looking for better emulation and more customization. AtGames also made the Activision Flashback Blast. I expect this one to be similar to the Atari collection. The amount of games is the same, and the back of the box does show 2600 titles. The game selection is great, with pretty much all of Activision's classics being on here. I would have liked to have seen Kaboom and Pitfall 2 though. For some reason they threw Atlantis on here, which is not an Activision game, but it's a cool bonus. When navigating through the game list, I noticed how unresponsive the controller was. I really have to press the inputs hard for them to go through. I tried Pitfall first, but the controls were very delayed. When I tried a second time, Pitfall Harry started walking to the right on his own and I couldn't stop him. After a reset of the console, I couldn't get the controller to work. I tried resyncing the controller to the dongle, but no luck. I tried a different HDMI port, different USB port, and I even tried syncing a different controller, but nothing solved the issue. Unfortunately, Pitfall was the only game I was able to try. From my few seconds of playing that, the emulation quality was blurry just like the Atari collection, but I can't speak about the other games because I didn't try them. I looked up to see if other people had the same problem with this collection, but I didn't find anything. I probably just received a bad unit, but it does go to show that these consoles are very cheaply made. Now let's take a look at the Legends Flashback Blast. Thankfully this one did work. I'm not sure what the theme of this console is supposed to be though. What do Space Invaders and Burger Time have to do with each other? But it doesn't matter as long as the games are good. I knew that the Activision and Atari collections would have 2600 games, but I'm not sure what to expect with this. We're off to a good start because Space Invaders does look like a decent mimic of the arcade version. But they unfortunately dropped the ball with Burger Time. For some reason they gave us the 2600 version instead of the arcade one. Here's what that one looks like for reference. And like with the other collections, the emulation quality is terrible and there's no menu options to change anything. Burning Rubber is on here too, and once again they used the 2600 version. Same with the game Frontline and Jungle Hunt. Why was Space Invaders the only title to get special treatment? The game selection is disappointing. We have 6 classic arcade games and the rest are homebrew titles. Why didn't we get more games from Taito or Data East? I will give some credit though, the homebrew games are decent and they were created by members of Atari Age. In the game Shapeshifter, you shoot down the barrier above so you can defeat the boss that's hiding behind it. Space Raid is a Zaxxon clone, which is nice because the 2600 never received a proper version of that game. It's cool that they included these on here, but I can't imagine the target audience for a collection like this would care about these homebrew games. Like with the Namco collection, they went the lazy route and gave us the console versions, except for Space Invaders. At least they didn't lie on the packaging though. The only screenshot on the box is Space Invaders, and we did receive that version. They did the bare minimum and that's it. In my opinion, this is worse than the Namco collection. This seems to be the dumping ground collection that received a random hodgepodge of games that didn't fit elsewhere. So yeah, if I had to rank them, the Atari one is my favorite. They picked a near perfect lineup of games that makes the collection worth it despite the emulation issues. The Activision one seems like it was going to follow the same path as the Atari collection, but I was not able to play much of it. The reason I picked the Namco collection over the Legends one is because at least the Namco one had a very strong lineup of games. The latter collection just seems to be a junkyard of leftover licenses. Do I recommend these collections at all? In 99% of cases, no. There's almost always a better option. For Namco games, you can get the Namco Museum Archive collections on the Switch. These have all the NES versions. For Atari games, you can either pick up the Game Station or the Atari 50 collection. Even AtGames made their own collection on the Switch, and it's way better than what we just saw. Unfortunately, the AtGames Blast consoles are not worth your time. Hey, I just wanted to thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, hit that like button. If you enjoy this type of content, hit the subscribe button for more content. Both of these things really help the channel grow. If you have anything to share, feel free to leave a comment. I read every single comment on this channel, and I'm pretty good at replying back. Anyway, have a good one.